Good afternoon, everyone. For those that's joined us for the first time, this is the Prince George's County Planning Department's Brown Bag Series. Happy New Year, everyone. This is our first official Brown Bag session for 2025. We thank everyone that's online. We have a nice crowd that's online, but we also have some die-harders that have come here in person. So thank you guys. As always, we have our doors open on the second Tuesday of the month for the public to come in into our Global Cafe. It's a great time to not only see some of the folks that you work with behind the scenes, but also to connect with us here in person. We do have some refreshments because it is a brown bag. So today is going to be a very interesting topic for a lot of folks. And so for those that don't know who I am Lakeisha Hall, the Planning Director for Prince George's County. And so this topic is very passionate, not only for myself, but for my team and a lot of folks that are out here in the community. Just to do a quick little recap, we're on the 5th session of this Brown Bag series. So we're midway through this series. So if you guys remember, we started last year wanting to provide more opportunities for the public to connect more with the planning department. So we're really excited with the series and the feedback that we're receiving. And we want to continue to make sure that we're answering your questions. So feel free throughout this session to drop it in the chat. So we have 6 more sessions remaining. And so we're hoping to have a successful session until July. And then we'll take a recess. And then we'll come back in the fall with another series of sessions. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to the next presenter, but I hope you guys enjoy yourselves today, and once again, Happy New Year.
Good afternoon, everybody. I wanted to start this session with a quick recap of our last session that was on the Woodland Conservation Ordinance. Tom Burke, the supervisor for the environmental planning section, gave a great presentation. The attendees received a copy of the presentation. If you are interested in having a copy, please you can ask at the end of the session, and if you are virtual, please ask in chat and we will take care of it. He presented, as I said, the Woodland Conservation Ordinance and the most recent and major changes and updates that happened last year. Those include conservation and afforestation thresholds requirements, conservation, banking, and alternative credits, tree canopy coverage requirements, grandfathering provisions, and minor and major revisions, among other interesting topics. Today's session focuses on transportation procedures, including bicycle and pedestrian impact statement. Then we're going to have another transportation session in February. I want to take a time here to remind you that registration opens at the end of the session and it closes 1 week in advance. So please register on time. We close 1 week in advance, which is around February 4. With that, and not to take any more time from the presenter, I want to introduce Crystal Hancock, the supervisor for transportation planning section. Crystal, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you, Director Hall. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Crystal Saunders Hancock, and I am the acting Transportation Planning Supervisor. So I'm going to stand, if this is okay, I'm going to stand this way because I feel like I'm standing here, but whatever. So we'll just advance the next slide. We're here to talk just a little bit about some of the county infrastructure. And in it, we want to talk about some of the assets that we have as a part of that are located, within Prince George's County. We have 15 metro stations, 11 Purple Line stations, which we all know are under construction right now, but they'll be awesome when they are open and available to the public. We also know that there are 8 MARC stations, as well as our Amtrak station at New Carrollton, and our major in our freight. I'm sorry, let me stand right here so I can see. And we also have an extensive freight network. Oh, I am the next slide, so just give me a minute. Sorry, everybody. So next we have our bus service. We do have 24 Prince George's County, the bus routes located within the county, as well as approximately 1,400 stops and 58 metro bus routes. We do know that these routes are changing as times are changing, as commuters change, as ridership changes. We're keeping up with that information. We also just wanted to acknowledge that we are situated right in a sweet spot In terms of travel, that's through I-95, through 495, our Beltway, US 50, as well as 295 and US 301. We also have 4,100 miles of roadways and streets, 163 miles of bike lanes. Also, I want to note that we have 34 capital bike share stations as of December of 2024. Some new stations were added by the Department of Public Works and Transportation. We also have the VO system, which is another bike share system located in College Park. We also have 139 miles of bikeable shoulders. We have 39 miles of sharrows. We also have 31 miles of side paths located within the county. And these numbers are constantly growing based on the development projects and different projects that we acquire. We're able to acquire new shared use paths or side paths, new bike lanes, new sidewalks. We're constantly adding to that number. We also have some other transportation services that we wanted to acknowledge. One is the College Park Airport, because we want to show the depth of the facilities that we have in the county. We also have a proposed ferry service as well as rideshare and maglev. Again, we're showing our full breadth. What we also want to just acknowledge is that there are one system, the system that we just outlined, but there are many players. We have MDOT-SHA that we work with in terms of they are the owner and managers of most major roadways, anything that starts with a Maryland. Two of the three major routes which we've identified before with the National Park Service. We've also talked about the MDTA, which manages the Inter-County Connector. WMATA manages heavy rail and a significant bus network. There also is DPW&T manages the remainder of our roadway network, as well as MNC PPC manages a majority, of the trails that are in the county. Next, we have our Master Plan of Transportation. Our Master Plan of Transportation is a project that we're currently working on now. It it does articulate the vision for the county in terms of transportation and mobility, in terms of establishes the county policies and the movement of goods and people, as well as recommends new and improved streets and services, bicycle, pedestrian, side path facilities. That's what this Go Prince George's, which is the name of our new Master Plan of Transportation, is going to take a look at. And in it, we are going to prioritize people, create great places within the county. Note always that Prince Georgians come first. It means equity means safe access for all, as well as sustainability is paramount. And there are lots of challenges to tackle within the Master Plan of Transportation, or Go Prince George's. And in it, again, we're looking at placemaking opportunities, which are able to build places where people want to live, work, and play. Sustainability, which is just increasing the opportunities for us to be car-free. That's in car light, which means we're focusing more on sidewalks, on bike paths, side paths, just a variety of multimodal options. We're looking at equity, which is improving the accessibility of transit deficient communities, trying to be able to provide transit where people, we want to identify where. We want to identify where transit is needed. We also want to look at safety, and we want to make sure that the streets are safe for all, as well as looking at streets and roads, with managing the distinction between the two, as well as providing information and knowledge and the trade-offs and options of, if you choose one, what that means to the other. So being able to balance our network. The other thing we wanted to talk about is that we're working with our partners with Department of Public Works and Transportation on a Vision Zero. Their Vision Zero, or the Vision Zero process, is to eliminate roadway fatalities and serious injuries by 2040. Just in terms of addressing the 6 E's, typically there are 5, but Prince George's County has identified an additional E, which is engineering, enforcement, education, emergency response, equity, and evaluation. So we'll just go to our next slide. But again, it's just mentioning the importance of Vision Zero and how we are trying to prioritize pedestrians over roads and the importance of that. Next slide we have is complete and green streets. What this concept is it allows us to sort of talk the talk that we walk the talk that we've been talking about. I guess talk the walk. I don't know how that saying goes. But in any event, what it is that we're not just talking. We're trying to put some words behind the actions. And what that is through this process with a complete and green street. It sort of identifies, and we'll see in subsequent slides, it allows people to realize that we're going to look at narrowing roadways or widening the medians to be able to provide a safe opportunity for people to walk. It looks at, if you take a look at this slide right here, you kind of see there are people walking on the sidewalk as well as our bike lanes, but we've also had what we call bulb outs, which allows people to a shorter distance for them to cross the street, and that helps with some of the pedestrians feeling safe and able to walk in communities. Excuse me. So this is another example. Sorry, let me go back. This is one example. Here's another example of a complete and green street. The previous slide showed that there was 2 lanes in each direction along with parking, and this shows that there's just 1 lane in each direction. And look at the wide median. It makes people feel safe just in terms of being able to walk. And we also talked about this whole bulb out, which again allows people to feel safer because they're not crossing 2 lanes of traffic. They're just crossing that 1 lane of traffic. So that's helpful in building confidence. Oh, sorry. Okay. And here we go again with our complete and green streets. This is looking at another segment that does not have a wide median, but it also shows the difference in your bike lanes that are next to the parked cars. And this is just another example. So we've seen the wide medians, we've seen no medians, we've seen two lanes in each direction, 4 lanes in each. 2 lanes of traffic because there's 2, and then there's 1 lane of traffic in each direction. So, excuse me, I'm nervous. I could talk about this stuff all day, but I am nervous. So please forgive me. Next we have with our complete and green streets, this is what we call a cross section. And in this cross section, it shows an example of what a mixed use boulevard could look like with 4 travel lanes. And in it, we see, we talked about the bulb out before, but we also talked about having a sidewalk along with a separated 1-way bike lane. And then to provide a buffer for the pedestrian and bike facilities, we've also identified a landscaping, which means we just have a planning to make people feel a bit safer. Next we have, in this one, we have a parking with a bulb out, that magical bulb out again. 2 travel lanes as well as our median. And what we do on one side, we do on the other side. This is also an example of a shorter segment that only has 2 travel lanes instead of 3. So there's a 2 and 3 lane travel corridor as identified in terms of the one on the bottom is a neighborhood connector cross section, and the one above is the mixed boulevard. The mixed boulevard, of course, is the one we would use in a more busier area. Okay. So next we have our favorite topic of adequacy. So we have within our Prince George's County Code, we do have adequate public facilities, or our APFO, and it ensures the adequacy and the concurrency of public facilities. Public facilities meaning roads in the case of transportation, but it also means schools. It also means our Prince George's County Police Department, the fire department. So the adequacy is, while transportation is a portion of it, there are other amenities or public facilities, that are included as a part of this. So first we know that it ensures the concurrency of public facilities. We also know that it identifies a development application, how a development application can help achieve adequacy. Concurrency in this case, because we mentioned it above, it means that the adequate public facilities are in place when the impact of a development occurs. Usually the standards that define adequacy are expressed in measures that are appropriate to the facilities. So in this case, what we're referring to in terms of transportation is that when development applications come in, and we'll go through that a little more in this slide presentation, when development applications come in, we also look for improvements that the development can provide in terms of sidewalks, in terms of bike lanes, in terms of transit facilities. We've seen that. We've seen in widened roadways. We've seen acceleration and deceleration lanes. We've seen a variety of different ways that adequate public facilities within transportation can occur. So again, we wanted to identify where in the code this information is, because I know you won't just believe, well, Crystal said it was there. So we wanted to provide some information in terms of the regulations. The information is contained in subtitle 24, in our subdivision section, subtitle 24-4500B2. And it says that application shall not be approved until a certificate of adequacy is approved in accordance with the procedures of this particular section. And as such, development applications are required to present their two referrals. One is just an adequate public facility recommendation. It contains some information, and we'll go into detail about that in the next session. So I don't want to give everything away this time. So the next time we'll talk in detail about that. So again, I jumped the gun, of course, but our APO regulations, again, I mentioned it talked about police, fire, and EMS, schools, transportation, parks, and recreation is what I did not mention previously. So in terms of transportation adequacy, the things that our section looks at, if your development, if it's required, we look at traffic impact studies, as well as the trip capacity, sometimes traffic counts, and what is the de minimis. So we talk a little bit about traffic studies. Traffic studies are studies that are required for developments that require that incur over 50 trips during the AM and PM peak period. We also have our trip capacity, and based on the number of trips, we develop a capacity is identified. Next, if the development is 50 trips or less, generates 50 trips or less, a trip count is required, where a traffic engineer will typically go out and count or put a tube down to be able to count the number of vehicles that are going in the area. And then we also have a de minimis. If the development is less than five trips, it is considered a de minimis trip. Here we go again about transportation adequacy. At the time of the PPS, the proposed development shall demonstrate the compliance with the level of service, and that is 244505A2. And the level of service is really a qualitative measure applied that uses a sequence of letters, which we'll go into after this slide, from A to F to describe the operational conditions at an intersection or within a link. And then we also have 244505B, which is able to accommodate or offset alternative vehicular trips within a transportation impact area. So we'll have that information. Again, we'll go into, this session today is more of an overview. The session the next time is when we'll go into more detail about what our process is and how we develop the information that we use for our development applications for transportation. So again, our transportation adequacy was identified in Plan 2035 in the Prince George's County 2035 approved general plan. It also outlines the regulatory statements in the subdivision regulations, and the LOS, which is level of service, is geographical by the TS, or transportation service areas. I mean, the acronyms literally will kill you. So for that, I'll slow down a little bit, as well as our regional transit districts and local centers. And I think in the next slide, it identified, well, in a few slides coming up, we've been able to identify those items. Again, this is just to talk through our critical lane volume or our level of service. If your trips are between 0 and 1,000, that means we'll go into it a little deeper. That means your level of service is A, whereas if you have a 1,600 or over, it's a level of service F. Again, so here's our level of service. Again, you can see that we can see right here that this where there's sort of free flow of traffic is a level of service A. And then as we go on, we'll see that level of service B is more of a stable traffic. And then level of service C is still stable, but trying to maneuver through can be a little difficult. So next we have our level of service D, which is high density, but is a stable traffic flow, and you're starting to be able to, your movements are being restricted to be able to move from lane to lane. And level of service E is any maneuverability that you have is difficult. And then your level of service F is a complete breakdown. So that's where we are with level of service there. And that's it. Again, okay, so here, this is what we talked just a little bit about earlier in terms of how we apply our level of service, our policy areas. Our TSA or transportation service areas are typically, not all the times, but typically in Brown are located within the Beltway, right in this area. Our level of service 2 in general is typically outside of the Beltway and between US 301, typically. And then our TSA 3, is located outside of US 301, typically, because there are changes. That's how we generally remember the areas. But again, things change. So what we have here are our regional districts, which we see up here in this sort of purple color. Does anyone know how many regional districts we have? Okay, that's your homework assignment for next week. Next, we have our local centers, which are identified in this green color right here. Any idea? Local? Okay, again, your next homework assignment. And then we also have our purple line, our proposed purple line centers, which are identified, of course, with these little purple. So next we have with our TSA, within the TSA 1 centers, which are located, they have still have the same level of service also, which is the same as the TSA 1. So the centers, but if you notice in TSA 2, it has a LOS of D, but look at the CLV is from 1301 to 1450. But in our TSA 2 centers, it's a level of service E, which we're allowing more traffic to be able to come through, which is a 1451 to 1600. And you can see the levels change a little bit. But what's even more interesting is that our RTO or our, regional traffic, our edge zones and our LTO and our PD zones, which are transit edges, are allowed to have a level of service F with a range from 1601 to 1800 CLV, which is a big increase because we noticed that these are the areas where we want to see more intensity and more intensity and allow more traffic. This is the areas where we have more of the pedestrians. We have more people walking from or taking a bike from one of the areas to their home, because in theory, we love for them to live and not even need a car, to be able to live near a transit station, to be able to travel in a manner that allows them to get around. Yes. Oh, sorry. Okay. I know I start talking and then sorry. So to All right. So next, as a result, for our project scoping, what we typically do to allow us to understand how we can get to the CLV, our team has a scoping meeting, And in that meeting, we meet with our applicant, our county agencies. We work with the Maryland State Highway Administration, as well as Department of Public Works and Transportation, as well as Department of Permits, Inspection, and Enforcement. And to be able to talk through whatever, so that we all so the applicant can hear everything that we're saying at the same time, so that the conflicts, so we've worked through the conflicts. So once we do a scoping, we meet to discuss the scoping. In that meeting, we determine if a traffic study is required. So previously I mentioned that we determine if you're 50 or more trips, you then are required to do a TIS. 50 trips or less, you're required to do traffic counts. But in it, we take a look at the boundary and identify what projects have already been approved in the area to determine what can be considered background development. And then the planning department, which is us, we have the final say and approval of what that scoping area looks like and the elements that will be included. So we do this both for traffic as well as BPIS, which is the bicycle and pedestrian. So traffic as well as bicycle and pedestrian. So if our traffic study, we take a look at it's a specialized engineering study that looks at traffic counts. We assess existing and future traffic scenarios, which I've mentioned previously. We took a look at what projects have been identified for development. So what project could develop before your project to be able to make sure that all of the traffic is included, so that we get a full picture of the potential. We also recommend whatever mitigation that could occur and forecast which trip generation or distribution could occur, which is sort of what I just mentioned. And this is I know it's a lot, I won't go through everything, but we'll talk a little bit in more detail about it at our next meeting. This is how we conduct traffic studies. We look at 3 different scenarios for our traffic study. We look at existing conditions with the data that's been collected, as well as background conditions, and all of that comes up with a future condition. And then that condition is what we take a look at to determine what impacts to the development could occur. And then we're meeting, and there, as we mentioned before, we're meeting the level of service to mitigation in terms of, so if your project, if it's determined that your project is an F, we then take a look at what can we do, or what improvements can be done to increase your level of service. Is it that you reduce the number of dwelling units? Is it that you're reducing the floor area ratio, or that you're incorporating an alternative trip? Are you offering some project or something that will help mitigate the number of trips that you're proposed to use? We also have transportation improvements, such as I mentioned, is it an additional lane? Is it a turn lane? Is it a right in, right out? Is it a trip reduction program? Are you sponsoring some kind of trip reduction which reduces the number of trips on the road? Are you making a financial contribution to a transportation demand management? Are there other available capacity improvements either through your PFFIP, which requires a fee? Is it your Brandywine Road Club? Is it any kind of capital improvements that are required? So we look at mitigation. It's not just one single way that we look at it. We look at it in a variety of different ways. So this is what we commonly call our PFFIP, which is our Public Facilities Financing and Implementation Program. So what it is that any development that will utilize a specific intersection will be required to pay a fee to be able to build in this area. It's a lot we can go into, but we'll just leave it at very general. Again, we'll talk details in the next meeting. We also have our Brandywine Road Club, which allows developers, to pay into if you're located within a specific area, of Brandywine, it allows you, and if you're located within a specific area identified in CR 60/1993, it allows you to just pay a fee instead of doing any improvements for development. And other adequacy that we talked about is sometimes through master plan amendments will supersede subdivision regulations for transportation. We also have a special, something special that we looked at in the US 1 corridor to make sure that as projects are developed, we're able to take a look at some of the things. For example, we limit the study area to 3 road segments, as well as other segments are analyzed but not subject to adequacy, and that's defined, and it's all case-by-case basis. So again, we talked a little bit about transportation adequacy, and we did discuss just a little bit about the pedestrian and bike impacts or statement, whether you're exempt based on your zone or what requirements you are what you're required to have, and it's all based on zone. Next, we have that information is also, in our code 24-4506, and it identifies the features such as integrated sidewalk or trails and bicycle facilities should be designed for the safe use of all users. We also have 24-4506C1B, is that within a half a mile of subdivision, the board finds that there's a nexus required for applicants to connect pedestrian and bike facilities to nearby destination. So it's not that we are requesting that something be built to a road to nowhere, but we're looking for a connection between what we're asking the developer to construct. And through that, we also conduct the scoping, very similar to the TIS, is through the BPIS. And in the BPIS, we also, for one project, they could be held with not at the same time, but in the same meeting, to be able to talk through some of the challenges that could or could not, or what connections could be made, or what could happen. And in it, again, it's the same players with the applicant as well as the agencies, DPI, the Department of Permits and Inspection and Enforcement, Department of Public Works and Transportation, as well as the municipalities are also invited, as well as the Maryland State Highway Administration, District 3 staff. Again, at that point, we look at existing facilities and amenities. We review the boundary and identify the trip generators, the one that we referenced in the previous slide. And this applicant also provides improvements that are allowed by the operating agency. I talk so much and I talk so fast that's it. So questions? I know it's a lot to go into, and I apologize, but we are definitely here to answer any questions you may have. Yes. Oh.
Sure. So with the need for more bike lanes, wider sidewalks, shared use paths, et cetera, will the county be supportive of road diets in that, taking away vehicular capacity where you may not have any right of way to get those things? Going from a 4-lane, right, to a 2-lane with bike lanes, buffers?
So I think that, and anyone here can jump in also, I think that will depend on us working with our partners in terms of, because again, we're planning the DPI and DPW&T, Department of Permits, Inspection, and Enforcement, as well as Department of Public Works and Transportation. They take the lead in construction, and it's their roads. So we kind of talk with them, and we work with them through different ideas. We are looking at the urban street design standards that could promote something similar to that in the future, but I don't know. I can't say that, oh, we're going to take this road and make it look like that. It's just we're definitely looking at that, but it's not our road.
Yeah, understood. Because sometimes, right, we get asked to provide these things, but then we have to say that we're going to increase congestion slightly, right? Because we need to use that
Yes.
public right of way to build these things, which takes away from cars.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, sort of related question is, will the planning department be supporting as part of the new master plan of transportation as a framework for prioritizing changes to the transportation network, both the, expanded capacity, but also things like what Will's talking about here, where there's existing infrastructure that could be retrofitted to include bike lanes or pedestrian infrastructure, et cetera. I mean, where we're sitting right now seems to me to be like, ground zero of a place with overbuilt roadways, too many lanes for an urban area, and you've even got urban road standards that currently would probably call for something else if it were redeveloped today. But is the county going to have a framework to try to identify and prioritize, as part of the capital budget process and the planning process, retrofits to some of that infrastructure to make this place more bikeable and walkable?
I think
You
again,
could consider that a question or a comment. Take your
I think
take
it's
your
more.
pick.
I think it's more of a comment because, again, we're planning and we work with agencies, with our DPW&T, but I don't know. Maybe there's another answer.
You're right on. I'm James Hunt. I'm the deputy director here with the planning department. But great question. That's one question that really does involve all the stakeholders involved. We're talking about the county, and this is their capital budget. So if this is a priority of theirs, then they're going to have to take that initiative. But it's from our standpoint, we're going to be able to try to support them as much as possible. That's just like you were saying. That's the reason for the Go Prince George's. So, given your point and everyone else's too, I will say that in the previous comment that came up, that's the reason why we need all the support with reviewing this master plan of transportation right now. Just to kind of give a little background, if you aren't aware, January 30th, we're going to go for a request to print from the permission to print from the planning board. That document at that point in time, if the planning board so chooses, that document will go out. And so we're going to need your feedback as a part of that process. So to kind of get that feedback, and then there's going to be a whole public hearing process as it relates to that. And we're going to get all those comments as they come back, and then have a discussion before the planning board as well as with the council on what that looks like. And so that's why we're interested to kind of get back from you all for like you were saying here in Largo, what does that look like as it relates to some of these streets here in Largo to put them on a street diet, or not only here but everywhere else? Where would that be most applicable? So I want to take a look at that as a part of that particular process, and seeing what they are to get your feedback. We are looking at it in other areas as well, but we want to try to hear back from you all too. So we are looking into that as a part of it.
We have some questions from our online participants. This session has clearly focused on development projects. Will there be sessions discussing creation of bike ped facilities outside of developments, such as development on a bicycle master plan?
So my understanding is that the creation of new bike lanes outside of developments would occur. Is that with parks maybe? Because what the bicycle master plan is that once we get developments, we request the bike lanes based on the master plan.
So yeah, to that point, we are going to be working with our partners with Parks as well as the Department of Public Works and Transportation on those initiatives, what that looks like in their public rights of way, things like that. So we will be looking into that. But as a part of these brown bag sessions, we're going to more so like Crystal was just saying a few moments ago. The next one's kind of going to kind of dig into the transportation review guidelines. If you want that to be a future session, we will definitely take note of that and add that in as far as, for a topic of discussion, we can look into that.
How can city management ensure that they are including in the transportation project scoping and BPIS scoping discussions? This has been inconsistent in the past, with the city left out of these preliminary discussions.
Okay, so then we were under the impression that we have to do a better job. I will say that. So typically, when we receive information, we are under the impression, rightly or wrongly, that the municipality or city is already aware of the project. And if that's not the case, then we will do a better job in making that happen. we're still human, we're still understaffed, we're still helpful.
Just to kind of add on to that, we are very receptive to getting that feedback from those municipalities. So that's a part of creating that partnership, right? So it's not just the planning department taking the look at transportation. We have the municipalities. We have got 26, 27 municipalities here in Prince George's County. We want to make sure they're a part of this process. So therefore, it's incumbent on us to make sure they're included. So as a part of the standard review process, when it comes to development applications, we always reach out to them. I will say this, I think it's really important to make sure that that communication or that contact information is constantly updated. So we have that information, but we will do our best to make sure all those municipalities are incorporated into that process and we get that feedback as it relates to that. And I will say this, you have my contact information. If not, it's on the website. Reach out to me. I am more than happy to kind of coordinate and get scheduling meetings to make sure that those comments are, incorporated or heard, make sure that those municipalities are heard as a part of the process, and so we can kind of work together. And it's not just that, like I said, it's not just the planning department working on initiatives or plans in a vacuum. We're not in a vacuum here. We're actually definitely working with you all and with all the municipalities, the development community on these projects as they come through.
And so I'll definitely chime in here for those that just joined. Lakeisha Hall, the planning director. And so the great thing about what you heard today is that we are trying to be multimodal. And so I appreciate the conversation about bike facilities. That's part of the transportation network. It's really important to understand transportation even includes horses. We were actually laughing about that the other day, about equestrian. We have folks in this county that live in parts of the county that rely on using all types of modes, including taking horses to their destinations. So how do we even plan for that type of movement? We really want to be cognizant of complete streets. And so how many guys so I can't see the folks online, how many people heard of NACDO? Of course. So we're looking at some of the best practices across the country. We haven't updated our master plan in over 15 years. And so how do we start looking to see how other places that are the same geography tackle some of these projects with single occupancy vehicles, our trails, right? Our sidewalks. How do we not only look at the development side and the capital side, but also make sure that we really repurpose our areas to make sure we can get around. My staff laughs at me all the time. I take transit, right, you guys? And so I'm a die-harder that we have multiple modes to move around in this county, that we don't have to rely on one mode over the next. One thing we're learning through our process that we're doing is how do we also evaluate and analyze some of our roadways? So do we pilot out some of these things? We have, 8 or so agencies. So we've been in meetings over the last 2 months with multiple agencies, an alphabet soup of agencies, and we're all starting to put our heads together. How do we work with our state roads, our county roads? We have rails and commuter options. How do we deal with the traffic issues? How do we deal with pedestrian trips and bicycle trips? So these are all things that we haven't tackled in this county, and we want to make sure that we do our part as we're starting to move forward the different options. And so over the next few months, we'll be sitting down and really rolling up our sleeve to see how do we really start to advance transportation in a more feasible way with all of our partners. And so I just wanted to chime in that I hear you guys loud and clear. I was taking some notes on my pad. I'm a little old school with paper here, but I just want to let you guys know we hear you loud and clear, and we want to follow up with some of your questions later on.
Thank you. You said one more question? Lisa, no? Anybody else? Did I scare you away from talking too fast? Anything else? No? Okay.
Well, I do want to thank each and every one of you all for attending this session today, both virtually and in person. As you can see, transportation is a very complex initiative that we have here in Prince George's County. It's a topic that, the citizens, the development community, everybody's involved with, right? And we want to make sure that everyone is as safe as possible. We want to make sure we address all of the transportation options here in Prince George's County. We want to make sure we're looking forward, getting outside of getting outside of what we're used to seeing what transportation looks like. So it's not just bike, ped, the traffic when it comes to that, but we're also talking about, just like the director was saying, maybe it's different types of paths that are out there as well. What are we doing when it relates to, multimodal transportation? So we want to make sure that as a part of our various processes, we address those within our master plan of transportation, the development process, and also making sure, to the point that we were talking about earlier, we're working very closely with our partners, all those stakeholders in this process. So again, thank you all for joining us today. It has been very informative, I will say, for myself as well as everyone else in here, and I really appreciate you all for joining. Please be sure after this session wraps up to register for the next session, which is going to be relevant to the transportation review guidelines. Is that correct?
This does include the BPIS process.
So that is a very important part, because the fact that you will, many of the folks in the development community want to know more of the details of those traffic studies that are out there. How are the decisions made? So what does that look like? So we want to kind of make sure we discuss those options with you all, what's out there for you, and what to kind of expect as a part of the process. So thank you again. Please register for that. If you have any questions, you are more than welcome to give us that feedback or the questions back to us. And also be sure to register and get a copy of the presentation. We'll be happy to give that to you as well. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.